citizens of that hill. What's the use in crying over spilled milk?
Welcome back, folks. It's 12 and a half minutes past 6 o'clock, and we want to discuss what happened in the Queen's Park, Savannah, with this sewage disposal issue. Well, the minister in the office of the Prime Minister, Stuart Young, says the alleged dumping of sewage at the Queen's Park, Savannah on Ash Wednesday posed no major health risk. Look at this. Okay, so an eyewitness actually claimed that sewage from the trucks was dumped at the Savannah. The owner of the trucks said he was unaware of this, adding that he was informed a tank was being cleaned. Of course, the police intervened.
Portable toilet facilities in use at the Savannah, because of course that would have been one of the gathering points over the carnival period. And for those porta toilets, if that's what they're called, to be moved from site back to where they came from, there had to be some tipping of them, and there may have been some leakage at that stage.
Minister Young said he got that report directly from the Agricultural Minister, who has jurisdiction for the Savannah.
Into the incident and the situation, say that there are no long-term health effects of it, etc. All right, so what it was is the removal of the portable bathroom facilities onto a truck to cart them away. There may have been some spillage, but there's nothing to be concerned about, is what we've been informed.
But should that have happened in Savannah at all?
Should what have happened?
In terms of any tipping of anything, any spillage?
Well, I am not sure. I didn't witness it myself. I'm not sure how these things are done. Certainly going forward in the future, we'd ask people to be a lot more careful.
The owner of the truck said the sewage is supposed to be dumped at a location in Sealots. I'm totally confused. If you're confused, I'm confused. We're all confused. So here's how we're going to solve this matter. We have with us in studio this morning Mr. Hayden Romano. He's the managing director of the EMA, and Mr. Wayne Rajkumar. He's the manager of technical services for the EMA. Gentlemen, welcome to Morning Edition. Well, I hope you can bring some clarity to this situation. Let's start with you, Mr. Romano. Now, in terms of waste disposal, I am sure that there are particular rules, regulations that all of the companies involved in waste disposal must adhere to. I'm also sure that not only SwimCall, but the EMA are the enforcing agencies for these regulations. Am I correct?
You are correct with respect to there are regulations with respect to the dumping of septage or sewage. And the two locations where septage go to is the Beetham area, either the WASA facility or the SwimCall facility. And in San Fernando, of course, you have the WASA facility in San Fernando. With respect to what happened at the Oval,
at the Savannah,
at the Savannah, we've spoken with the Horticultural Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, who was the authority for the Savannah.
Yes.
The NCC, who leased a portion of the Savannah for Carnival from the Horticultural Division.
Yes.
The Port of Spain City Corporation, who had a presence at the Savannah, and all these agencies, and these are the agencies who have the remit over the Savannah, have said there was no dumping of sewage in the Savannah. What was taking place, as took place right through the carnival weekend and during the carnival shows, was the trucks would come in and empty the porta potties.
But empty them where?
They empty them, they pump them from the porta potties into the tanks.
Of the trucks?
Of the trucks.
Correct, right.
And then they transport them to the disposal site, which was in the Beetham.
So, well, thank you for that level of clarity. But, Mr. Rajkumar, I wonder, you're into the technical aspects of all of this. These trucks, as they empty the porta potties and so on into their tanks, there's a question of spillage. Is that a normal part of this process of emptying these porta potties?
Well, it's not a normal part of the process, but what may have happened there is while in moving the portable toilets onto the trucks,
right?
These portable toilets normally have a reservoir in them to capture the urine the waste.
Right, but my understanding is that should be emptied.
It should be right.
Prior to
it may not have
moving
been right. It may not have been pumped completely.
Right.
So when they were tilting it, there may be some spillage.
Okay, so now, based on what Mr. Romano just described in terms of who would have had jurisdiction over that space, is it not correct to say that maybe representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture or even representatives from the NCC should have supervised this whole process of the removal of these portable toilets?
I mean, it's a pretty straightforward process. I mean, that is a normal sort of operation. So in terms of having the standard operating procedures in place to ensure that there isn't spillage, that should be the guiding principle. But as I said, it's a very straightforward process. So it may, these things, proper procedures need to be followed to ensure that there's no spillage. So going forward, your recommendation in terms of somebody supervising, a site supervisor, to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah, especially in a public space like the Queen's Park, Savannah. But Mr. Romano, I wonder if you could also help me understand this process. Is it that the organizers of events and so on, especially when they're using public spaces, these truckers that remove the sewage from the portable toilets, these are private contractors?
Correct.
Now, are these private contractors aware of the regulations in terms of the disposal of waste?
One of the roles of the EMA is to establish an effective regulatory framework for the protection, enhancement, and conservation of the environment. And we do this through a number of rules. The EMA has been successful in establishing the water pollution rules, the air pollution rules, the noise pollution control rules, the environmentally sensitive area and the environmentally sensitive species rules, the species rules, and the certificate of environmental clearance rules. Thanks, Wayne. The outstanding rule is the waste rules. So the waste rules are still in draft, and the expectation is that the waste rules will be enforced by 2018 once it goes through the process of the consultation process and through the minister's approval.
Does this require amendment to the legislation?
No. The legislation required us, the EMA Act required us to establish these 7 rules.
Right.
And one is outstanding.
Good.
And that one is the waste rules.
Fair enough. Now, here's the next question to you, and then I'm going to go back to Mr. Rajkumar. The issue is, how does the EMA disseminate this information to the public and to all of the contractors and participants in the industries that engage in waste disposal, waste management, and so on? How is that done?
We do it through our public education program, and I think we finally benchmark ourselves in terms of environmental literacy. So for the first time, we've done small surveys, but for the first time we've done a comprehensive survey with respect to environmental literacy. The survey was only completed in January, so we're just tabulating the results. And I think it'll be a good benchmark for us in terms of how we move forward with public education.
What do the preliminary numbers show? Are we environmentally literate?
Now, the nice thing about the numbers is that we're able to, we've done it so we know what is the environmental literacy of Port of Spain versus Tobago East versus Tobago West versus River Miaro. So it's quite a comprehensive survey. And I think the results was that we're not doing too badly. I think we're in the 50s, in the 50-something%.
So we have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go, but we're not as bad as we think we were. Of course, there's some areas that we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So yes, the EMA has a lot of work to do with respect to public education, and it's something that we're moving forward with. And I think it's a good time, before you go to Mr. Rajkumar, to bring in the fact that we're in the process of revising the 2006 National Environmental Policy. We have challenges in Trinidad and Tobago, but we also, have to, recognize the fact that we're two beautiful islands. I mean, we have, amazing ecosystems in terms of the Caroni wetlands or the river wetlands, the main ridge in Tobago and northeast Tobago. And therefore, we need to ensure that we have the policy in place to protect, to enhance, and to conserve these resources.
And I'm glad you're talking about making sure that you have the policy framework in place. Mr. Rajkumar, in terms of the capacity of the EMA to enforce these regulations, the EMA is charged with a number of different responsibilities as outlined by those policy guidelines. Do you have the capacity to enforce these rules?
Yes, the EMA has the capacity. So these programs involve a permitting system. So the EMA issues permits and certificates to entities out there who are potential polluters.
How do they qualify for these licenses, these permits?
Right, so there's a registration process, right, that determines certain thresholds. And once you exceed those thresholds, you come under the purview of a permit. So we, as Hayden mentioned, we have certificate of environmental clearance, so you need, before you start any types of activities, any new or modifying any existing activity, you need to apply for a CC.
And how do you ensure that these people are fulfilling the terms as outlined in these licenses and permits?
So the next phase, so after issuing the permit or the certificate, the next part is to monitor these permits and certificates to ensure that people are meeting their compliance responsibilities. So we have another arm of the EMA that is to monitor and ensure that these conditions are met. And if there are any breaches to those conditions, the EMA takes enforcement action. Now,
the carnival season just concluded, the official carnival season. There's another unofficial carnival season, but the official season just ended. People have complained bitterly about the enforcement of the noise pollution rules. How is the EMA positioned to ensure that the residents of heavily trafficked areas where you have all these massive music trucks passing in residential spaces, how is the EMA monitoring those noise levels?
Well, as you know, during the carnival days, Monday and Tuesday, there's a declaration, a proclamation in terms of noise levels and how much enforcement you can do. But nevertheless, the EMA have met with many of the residents before the carnival season to allay fears, and also have met with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where we sought some assistance from the TTPS to help the EMA, because we have some resource constraints in terms of manpower to effectively monitor some of these events during the carnival period.
Yes, because you have about at least 53 regional carnivals taking place as well.
Yes.
So we got the support of the TTPS for this year, and we plan to do the same next year. So it's all about ensuring and informing the public about the roles and responsibilities under the noise pollution control rules, and what the promoters and the organizers of these events need to comply with the noise pollution control rules.
And Mr. Romano, in terms of the outside of the carnival season, of course, Trinidad and Tobago, we have several cultural activities, several cultural events. We are a very religious people. Yes, we have lots of religious bodies that have public functions and so on a weekly basis, some of them. Now, if residents are adversely affected by these high decibel levels, what is the procedure for people to report something that is affecting them adversely? Is it that they call the police, or do they call the EMA? Who do they call?
Before we move on from Carnival, we were established, the EMA was established to coordinate, to facilitate and to oversee the execution of a national environmental strategy. And I want to congratulate the TTPS because I think 2017 was I wouldn't say very successful, but at least, we had the partnership with the TTPS, with DCP Dulal Chan. And we will be doing a post-mortem, not only with the TTPS and the Port of Spain Regional Municipal Corporation, City Corporation,
yes,
but also the residents of Woodbrook, to see, what we did well, what we could have done differently,
yes,
and how do we prepare for Carnival 2018. Because one of the things that we do not have control of over in the noise pollution rules is the music trucks.
Yes.
The music trucks, we have measured, sometimes as high as 120 decibels, when we, for most events, will limit it to 85 decibels. So I think it's something that we have to look at in terms of how do we manage music trucks and the level of sound that's coming out of music trucks. And there is actually a letter that came to us, through His Excellency the President, from a resident of Woodbrook, requesting that we look at these things. So it's something that we will be looking at with the TTPS and the other agencies. With respect to who you report nuisance events to, yes, you report it to the police, and directly to the police, and the police is now understanding their role. And I think that's the EMA fulfilling its coordinating function. So we've been training the police. We would like them to purchase noise meters. Of course, we know there's a financial problem throughout the country. So the noise meters, once the police purchase them, they can actually do their own measurements after being trained by the EMA.
So you've trained a batch of police
officers. We've trained a batch in the use of the noise meters.
Noise meters.
Yes. So and then our officers, our EPU, Environmental Police Unit, will go out regularly now with the police officers now that we have established that relationship. So I think, they have been successes.
But your EPU contingent
is
20
officers.
20 officers?
Yes, 20 officers.
And they're on duty full time?
Well, we have 4 shifts, 4 shifts of 5, and we have 4 officers in Tobago. And Tobago was also successful with Senior Superintendent Archie and the Secretary for Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, Secretary Devines. Again, lots of work done in Tobago. So I think this year, in terms of coordination, I think we can give ourselves an A.
But given a contingent of 20 and given the range of activity that the EMA must monitor, is that a sufficient number of officers to treat with what you have to implement, what you have to enforce?
Of course not. And therefore, hence the reason for us developing this closer relationship with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We know that they're stretched, but they have, given us the undertaking that they will assist us because we don't have the resources in terms of increasing our complement of officers.
Yes. And, Mr. Rajkumar, there are a number of different areas as far as environmental protection must consider. Now, when you look at the whole issue of not just what's happening in terms of noise pollution, but the natural environment, poor disposal of garbage, all of those issues, how are you treating with not only getting that training done with the TTPS, because it's not just about noise pollution.
Yes.
How are you going to disseminate that information a lot more effectively to the public and ensure that awareness is there so that people know how to treat with these matters?
Well, if we take a sort of a simplistic approach in terms of waste management and disposal, we already have the Litter Act on our law books.
Yes.
And this is something that...
But then the litter wardens.
Right. So we'd like to see, a greater emphasis placed on this in giving effect to the Litter Act, ensuring that litter wardens out there, just like the traffic wardens out there, and enforcing the Litter Act. I think that will go a long way in ensuring that the kinds of garbage you see strewn all over Trinidad and Tobago become a thing of the past. So you can start with that as a simple, and that could be effective almost immediately once you have the resources in place.
Yes.
But as Hayden mentioned, one of our missing links in our arsenal of regulation is the whole issue of waste management, which we see as a very important part in the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. It's reflected in the 2030 vision document, where it talks about the need for an effective waste management system in Trinidad and Tobago, because as you would understand, most of the landfills have reached the end of life, and in terms of we need a proper engineered landfill to manage the waste in Trinidad and Tobago, so that the leachates, etc., will be properly managed. And I think the CEO of Swimco had mentioned that recently, that we need to move into the realm of engineered sanitary landfill, so that we ensure and go along with that, there's need for recycling and waste segregation and all those things to minimize the amount of waste entering the landfill, so we don't use up a lot of space in the landfill.
So the issue there too is also, developing a recycling industry and using that as a platform for other forms of manufacturing. But the critical matter though, the protection of the water tables, the identification. If you say that our landfills at this current moment are in fact at the end of life, then is the EMA actively looking at other new sites, or is that solely the remit of SwimCall?
Well, I mean, the EMA will have a role to play in collaboration with SwimCall. But we know that since the 1980s, there have been a master plan for waste management in the country, which talked about closing off the existing Beetham and Guanapo landfill and establishing one location for Trinidad with a series of transfer stations. And that's where you will have all the recycling taking place. So there is already on the books.
A hub and spoke arrangement.
Yeah. Is it a matter of revisiting it, and probably fine-tuning some of the elements of that plan?
Yes.
And put it in effect, because, I mean, it's time we need to put something in place, because we cannot continue sending all this waste to the landfills as in present state. We need to divert waste from the landfill and, resegregate, recycle, reuse, upcycle, etc.
Yes. So that's where we are in terms of now your this outstanding policy. You're conducting consultations.
Public consultations.
At this time. But the key thing that I wanted to raise with you as far as your consultations, the whole question of plastics and the management of plastics, styrofoam and so on. How are you treating with the management of those materials entering the landfills? What are your thoughts in terms of what we can do better?
At this time, I mean, the EMA actually has an iCare project. It's a green funded project, and which deals with recycling. And the aim of the project is to change the culture, of Trinidadians in terms of recycling, so that and I think you'll be amazed at how many people are actually recycling and putting their beverage containers, whether it's glass, plastic or Tetra Pak, in bags and delivering it to our bins, which is then delivered to SwimCall's material recovery facility in Beetham Sealots. So that project is going to be stepped up, come April, to move forward in terms of trying to reduce the amount of recyclables going to the various landfills.
Right, but your bins are located only in public spaces.
In public spaces at this point in time. The ideal for any country, of course, would be curbside pickup. I know one regional corporation, Puna Piaku, has attempted it in some areas, and we're talking with them in terms of how successful it was, and to see if we can transfer it into the other regional corporations. But I think it's very critical for all of us to realize that we have a responsibility with respect to the environment. If we're going to, leave a better place for the future generations, we need to do things differently. Hence the importance of this national environmental policy.
Would you consider the outright ban of certain materials?
I think before we ban materials, we have to have replacements. Because, what the EMA does not want to be accused of doing is closing down industries. So there must be alternatives, and we must be able to put alternatives on the table. At the EMA right now, you come to any function of the EMA, you would not see styrofoam and you would not see plastic. You would see disposable items.
Disposable. So you're going with what, paper?
It's
paper-based,
paper
cardboard-based?
and cardboard-based.
Cardboard-based.
So they can be disposed of. So the EMA has done it, as an organization. What we would like is other organizations to follow us so that we get people to change in terms of their practices.
Mr. Rajkumar, I only have 2 more minutes.
Oh dear.
But quarrying is a major issue in Trinidad and Tobago. What is the EMA doing in terms of monitoring the quarrying activity, some of which is illegal, and how can the EMA continue to protect the natural environment from unscrupulous operators in the quarrying industry?
Right. So as I mentioned previously, the EMA has the certificate of environmental clearance process. So if you're an existing quarry or a new quarry, you have to go through that process.
Right, but what we are talking about are not the legal quarriers. We are talking about the illegal operations that are scarring the landscape.
Yes. So the EMA was part of a task force in the recent past, where there was between the Ministry of Energy and the National Security in terms of dealing with illegal quarries. And there have been a number of sting operations where equipment and was seized from these kinds of operations. So that those things have been done in the past to curtail and stop.
And this is an ongoing...
It's an ongoing exercise.
Excellent, excellent. I think that this is critical to the protection of the environment. So, Mr. Romano, let me give you the final word on this matter. Your consultations continue?
Consultations continue.
The
next one is the 13th of March at the Aruka Community Center. It starts at 6 p.m. And we'd really like the community to come out because it's your opportunity to make a contribution on the national environmental policy for Trinidad and Tobago.
Are you lobbying for more resources?
We always lobbying for more resources.
Well done. Mr. Rajkumar, thank you so much. Mr. Romano, thank you so much. My namesake.